Welcome back to the Smite Wildcards, the path to the Smite World Championship, but only one team from each region can go. Obviously, I am Finch, and we're happy to have you here with us. Before we move on into more about those wildcards, I do want to remind you all that you can still enjoy some more gifts for those Smite fans in your life. Obviously, you are one of those Smite fans, so maybe treat yourself either grabbing the Smite mousepad, very cool full print Cthulhu art on it, as well as you can get those covers for those headphones as well if you want to grab those. So a couple of cool options if you want some more Cthulhu in your life, maybe be driven mad. So I am still joined here on the desk, though, by Gaga's Little Monsters, how I choose to refer to you here today, also known as Kiki. How are you doing here, Kiki? They were back in a certainly more your home turf. Oh, we might not be able to hear you there. Don't worry. Don't worry, I got you here with me.
Oh, hello.
Kiki.
There we go.
Yeah, you're
sorry,
back.
I was just so flabbergasted by you name calling me Gaga's Little Monster. It's been like way too many years. What was the question though?
Just making sure you're excited to be back on your home turf here for NA.
I definitely am much more comfortable. Not really fully aware of the EU players, so I wasn't really sure what to expect. The last match that we just watched, I definitely know most of those players, and I had to give it to Spreed's team. They definitely impressed me. I didn't think that they would have so much coordination. They were not playing too reckless as well, so I'm definitely glad to see that people are taking it seriously.
Yeah, and they're moving on against Get a Grip. Maybe not quite as strong as that roster was. I mean, that is the Meerkat sort of master roster that has been strong before, but maybe is not quite at that level right now. So we'll see later on in that matchup how they'll do. But obviously, we're moving on here to this current match. This is Froggy versus Mind the Gap. Froggy, a team that you all should be familiar with. Baroneri, Data Member, some of these names you all have heard before, certainly Dishonored. And Mind the Gap, a team that's made up of a lot of old sort of console players here, right? Like Layers and Wolves and Griff and Crimson. This is a team that has transferred well over to console, so an SCC versus SOC matchup. And if we were to talk about this Froggy team here, how well would you say that you know these guys here, and what would you be expecting from them?
Oh, I know them really well. I would usually, when I was competing in the SCC, I would meet them in the finals, and I would hardly ever beat them. It's something about Data Amoeba's carry playstyle. They make sure to funnel a good amount of farm into him. They always keep him safe. Promise is really great at initiating any sort of team fight. His Ganesh is definitely ban-worthy. And I mean, most of them, they all know how to handle themselves.
Certainly familiar with playing in these high-stakes matchups. You might remember Baroneri from that myth clip that was going around, but when he is in these SCC matches, my man is locked in and ready to play. Now, they're going to be going up against Mind the Gap. I give you a little bit of the primer on these guys, these console players who have really transferred well over here to these PC as well, and coming up out of the SOC, and I think a real chance to make some noise here.
Yeah, definitely interested to see these box boys come into play. You said Crimson's on there. I've always been a big fan ever since I saw him playing one LAN. I think he was Jingwei ADC. Now he dabbles in mid, but with Jingwei, you are really able to see when somebody has the confidence to dive in there. The best type of Jingwei is the ones who use their ults offensively. And with the haste that you get jumping off of your one, you're able to kite players around a lot, and it obviously gives you the attack speed, which just lets you slaughter the team.
Love seeing people recognize when on a traditionally safe character they can be aggressive, but these are some absolute killers on this Mind the Gap roster. When Wolves was on the box, he was unquestionably the best solo laner there. No one could touch him, and he's brought a lot of that same confidence here with him. Layers is very willing to play some of these odder picks. You see him on the Guan Yu here, one of the first ones I think last year to really start playing that, or maybe even earlier this year. It's just something where he knows what kind of stuff will work, and he can lead this team to success as well. This is going to be a tough tournament for him, obviously. A lot of really good teams here, but it's like Aggro was saying to us before, right? I think these SOC teams in NA in particular are a real threat to some of these SCC squads.
Yeah, I think it's the unfound confidence that the NA players have. They really shouldn't have this much confidence, but they're like, you know what? I believe in myself. I'm going to try my best. Layers always the type of jungler who will keep trying to apply pressure And it really works well with Snatty because Snatty's able to guarantee a lead for himself, and his rotations are on point.
Yeah, this is the Layers is the kind of guy that plays the same if he's 0-5 and 5-0, so you know he's going to be looking to get aggressive. Let's move into those picks and bans then for game number 1 and see what kind of stuff's going to be prioritized. Like we said, we know Layers has a wider god pool that you might not necessarily feel like they have to go to a traditional assassin right away. There's some flexibility in both of these rosters, but starting off with something like a Yamoja ban, that's about as standard as it gets. You don't want to deal with Yamoja. So much healing, so much control.
Yeah, you don't want to deal with that splish splash, getting things wet. Like, it's just not fun. Let's keep it dry. Let's keep it simple. We're also going to be seeing some set ban. I agree with that. I personally climbed Masters, or I got into GM like only playing set. He's really broken. So I'm glad that he's finally getting the respect that he deserves. And I agree with the raw ban. Those heals with the protection added are just way too hard to chunk through. We just saw him in the last match actually play flawlessly. His snipes are always something that you have to be aware of. Another sniping character, Persephone, will be banned out of here. We've been seeing her, and she is very 50-50. It's all based on if you have the skill and the mental to keep track of all those plants.
Yeah, I think people treat Persephone like she's a free win sometimes, but there is a lot that goes into playing her well. Sure, there's some things that can cover up. The ult's pretty wide. Obviously, you get to keep fighting even once you've died, thanks to her passive. You've got all those seeds, but I think that you still got to make sure that you're executing if you want this pick to work. But these bans are all fairly standard. Persephone, Ra, Yamoja are at the top of any tier list. Same with Set and Cthulhu and Ebo. So those are all removed. But is Nike going to be the first pick overall here for Froggy? Now, I think we've seen Nike flex a little bit between jungle and solo. Do you think Nike has that flex potential? And how strong is she right now?
Yeah, it's definitely a great option to have a flex, because if you have to first pick, then that means that you are leaving yourself up for counter picks. But when you are flexing, they're really unsure. So Nike top pick is always fine. The only thing that can feel wrong is if they can get a Sunder or something easily, then you might regret it, especially as a jungler Nike. You'll just get blown up. But we do see the Cupid Khepri. Definitely a very, very good balanced start off for MG.
Yeah, really strong duo lane. And you brought up the Sunder. Khepri has a lot of ways to apply Sunder easily, whether you're rooted or abducted or anything like that. He's got some strong options. Meanwhile, Froggy go right into the ROM. I'm glad we're seeing the top-tier hunters prioritized like they're the top 2 hunters over here. Looks like Mind the Gap prioritized Cube a little bit more, so Froggy ended up taking the ROM in response, and now they're hovering this Ymir. This has become a much more popular pick lately, Kiki, but doesn't it feel like Ymir he's kind of boom or bust, right? You can do really well, or he can look really bad.
Yeah, you definitely do get a lot of busting on Ymir. Sometimes, the enemy's just going to make sure to focus him down. If they pick something like a Fenrir or something, ooh, boy, you are really regretting the Ymir pick. But I'm definitely happy to see people building more confidence on Ymir. It's nice to have options that you can top 3, let your other teammates hold on to their picks. And Day's never one to shy away from picking Rama. That's actually one of the characters that we had to ban out so we could try to beat him. But, man, Day is just too good.
Day is one of the all-stars down here in the SWC for sure. We'll see if he can make that work for Froggy up against this strong front line now. A Khepri and a Guan Yu is difficult to get through. Guan, a bit more of the diving style, and Khepri, a bit more of that backline, so they have themselves covered. We'll catch up with these bans as well. Morgan and Bakasura banned. Great recognition. Likely no jungler yet for Froggy. Meanwhile, Froggy banned away the Erlang Shen. So they're trying to take a bit of an eye towards that jungle pool as well. And this is going to narrow it down a little bit. What kind of options are you thinking about left for the jungle role with Raven, Erlang, and Bakasura all banned away from them?
And with a bunch of junglers banned out right now, they have a lot of options for MG. Since they do have the Khepri, looks like they're going to go for the Nem now. They have so much. They have 2 healers. They have a revive. They have a shield. Yeah. That's going to be really hard to chunk through. So it really depends on what is Froggy going to look like. I'm thinking something with hard CC. You want to be able to stop that shield. The Nike jungle would be okay, but I feel like it's not enough damage. You probably want an assassin. Like Susano, I like where they're thinking with the Poseidon on top of that. You have the Cripple, which will stop Kepri from plucking. You can get a wall Whirlpool, and that's an instant way to just set up a good team fight. I'm a big fan of Froggy's comp if they lock in the Susano.
Yeah, I think Poseidon might even be a little undervalued so far this weekend. He's really strong right now, and certainly that Whirlpool can cause a lot of problems for a lot of dash-reliant characters, right? Cupid, Kepri, Guan, and Nemesis would love to be able to keep their dashes up, and Poseidon would shut that all down, and even some good setup for his Krakens. Now, what would be this last pick from Mind the Gap? They need a mid laner, and it's going to be Giannis. This is another one, just kind of like the Amir, who can be a little bit give and take in terms of his value. How do you like it fitting in with this draft?
Janice, hit or miss. If he's going to be landing his ults, which is RNG, honestly, late game, then I think these team fights will be going in a great way. But I feel like they lack the burst damage right now. So if Froggy's team can control the state of the team fights, then I really think that Froggy might come on top.
Froggy sounds like they have a good chance if they can use some of the good control they have, and they've got some good control to set up the fights, or if Mind the Gap with Wolves on one of his best picks here in the Guan Yu and Layers on the Nemesis. These are the kind of picks these guys love to play, and they could use to take over the game really at any time. So a lot to kind of keep our eyes on. The sustain for Mind the Gap versus maybe the more control here from Froggy. Do you think the sustain might be too big a problem? Did Froggy have the best tools to apply all that anti-heal they're going to need to slow down Mind the Gap?
I think Susano's really great at applying brawlers. Poseidon, which honestly, I'm a big fan of being able to get Toxic Blade and a Divine Ruin or brawlers on the same character. 80% anti-healing completely shuts down any sort of healers, especially with lifesteal being so prevalent in the meta right now. That's what makes Poseidon a really good pick right now.
Well, we'll see if Froggy will take that opportunity. Game number 1. Let's get it down to the casters.
Thank you, Finch and Kiki, J-Mac, and Mifflin here. Froggy and Mind the Gap. Mifflin, we've seen Mind the Gap countless times in the SOC matchups throughout this entire phase. And honestly, if there's any SOC team that has a chance of potentially making it to Worlds, I think it is this Mind the Gap team.
Yeah, there's a lot of talent over there. Layers, Erupt Crimson, Griff, all of these guys, Wolves as well, come from the Xbox. They've got competitive history behind them. They're used to playing on the world stage, so I'm sure they're going to be chasing that throughout the entirety of this weekend. And they're a team that I think the majority of the fans at home should be keeping their eyes on, especially around Layers. This guy is a playmaker, alluded to on the desk. Even if he's feeding, he's going to be looking to make proactive plays.
One person who's really no stranger to the competitive scene, though, on Froggy is Data Remember, but he's playing this Poseidon mid? Am I saying this right? Data Remember's moved to the mid lane here.
A little role swap for the boys. Maybe Baronary's slightly better at ROM. I don't think so, because I've seen what Day's able to do, right? But you know, if you keep your eyes on this month in Smite, there's a clip of Baronary there on Poseidon. It didn't look too hot. Maybe he's been struggling on this pick a little bit, whereas Day, slightly more comfortable. We've been seeing a lot of role swaps this weekend. The merit of it is that you're at least throwing people off a little bit.
Yeah, maybe that's what they're going with onto it. But I mean, if I'm trying to win this, this SCC tournament, this wild card, I want to put up people in their best roles, and Data Remember has been a tried and true Hunter player since the beginning of Smite's era. I mean, even going back to some of the origins of College Smite, he was one of the first champions of that, piloting this ROM, piloting Ho Yi and Kronos and gods like that. So seeing him in mid, a little bit jarring. We'll see maybe if he can pull it off here in this first game.
I'm excited for this match. If you look at these drafts right now, it seems like we're going to be foregoing the standard 3v3 meta. Both Giannis and Poseidon find the majority of their value on the ability to rotate throughout the entirety of the map. Poseidon through that Tide meter, going to get additional movement speed, and Giannis with the ability to legitimately just walk through walls. I think we're going to keep our eyes on the side lanes.
And be very careful moving in there. Griff holding on to those beads. Very important going into that fight as he didn't use those beads on the initial freeze. Trusted Twig to be able to keep him alive onto that. So great play out of Griff staying and holding on to that relic.
As far as dual lane goes, these two aren't really going to be looking to play nearly as aggressive as we're used to seeing in North America. Promise and Baroneri likely are going to be the aggressors for the majority of the early game. Once both rotate out, we are very used to seeing the Cupid-Rom matchup. It's going to be ult trades, trying to set up for jungle ganks, and from there, Luconium might have the slight advantage trying to chase down a Cupid. I think Mind the Gap are going to be much more team fight oriented or fighting around these objectives.
They remember taking a lot of damage in the mid as well as Luconium as they're getting pressured out. That Unstable Vortex. Such a short cooldown on that ability, and early game doesn't seem like it does a lot of damage, but when you're getting hit, what is like every 5-6 seconds late game for 800 damage, I mean, those numbers start to stack up pretty quickly.
I mean, it's not the easiest ability to hit in the game, right? It's a shotgun, it's a short range, there's some dead zones inside of it within the middle of the Unstable Vortex. We gotta give a little bit of respect to Yanis for being able to find those consistently, especially throughout the early game. It's not easy to poke out your opposition like Crimson's done already. He's full health, he's full mana, and he's already forced Day back to base as well as Luconium. That's a lot of pressure.
We'll see if Crimson is able to make this Giannis work, because there have been very few of the amateur players who've been able to make this pick work out. I mean, even at the top end of play, in the SPL level, very few players are ever really looking at this god, and it's just due to how inconsistent he feels. Like you said, the damage is kind of hit or miss. It's not the easiest thing to hit, and those, that ultimate doesn't hit nearly as hard when you're point-blank shotting it at them, but the utility more than anything, I think, is what's so important out of this Giannis. Do you think that Crimson is going to go more towards that utility build, or do you think he's just going to go full-on shotgun to the face damage?
Look, I've had the pleasure, or rather the displeasure, of having to play against Crimson a fair amount in the past, and this man cares about a couple of things, and utility's not one of them. He's looking at the KDA. He's looking to get into the back line and play around like an assassin. I wouldn't be surprised if we see him forego Aegis, instead picking up the Blink so he can play continually aggressive. It should make it a lot harder for them to get locked down, as well as easier to maneuver around this Poseidon. Poseidon, one of the best counter matchups into Yanis because of that cripple and the ability to one-shot, but it's going to be much harder for him to find it if Crimson's playing that true assassin role, and if money or history is any indicator, that's where my money's on.
Just took a look over and noticed that Wolves on his last back bought a Mage's Blessing and Tier 2 boots. I mean, how is this going to help him comparatively in that solo lane boxing up against this Nike?
Yeah, mana sustain is going to be a little bit better. It's going to keep you healing constantly. The scaling is going to be pretty nice. But as far as poke goes, I think I would still favor the Nike. She's going to have the range advantage, the ability to avoid the majority of the damage from the Taolu Assault as well. I think it's really that Wolves might be looking for some rotations or the ability to find some kills with the assistance of the jungler.
We're going to pop that ultimate and the beads out of layer so he can continue the chase inside of that Typhoon. Going to avoid that through space and time. We'll make sure that he gets out of there. Big gank. Got a few relics out of it, but so far the scoreboard still sits at zeros.
But look at the ultimate usage as well. 4 or 3 ultimates used by Mind the Gap, whereas Froggy only used Luconium. So now Day to remember on this Poseidon is going to have a very nice couple of seconds here where he's going to be the strongest member of the map. He should be looking to use this time to find an invade.
And the wall to freeze a little. The wall good. The freeze just a little off the mark there by Promise. Unable to get that CC onto the Guardian. And looking through, I mean, going back into the solo lane matchup, it was mentioned, Nike's kind of new counter is that Sunder that we saw, the buff to Sunder. I think everybody kind of thought Nike's gone. Why would you ever pick Nike? Because now our ultimate is useless. But we've kind of been seeing the counter. We've been seeing just as much, if not more, Nike recently.
Yeah, I think it's almost a double-edged sword, right? Well, we picked the Nike. It forced them to pick up a relic slot where they have to pick up that Sunder if they want to deal with us. And if they don't pick up the Sunder, well, I'm getting the same value out of Nike that I got beforehand. If they do, well, now they're missing out on potentially a Frenzy or a Horrific or an Onk or something along those lines. It's just it's a way to force the hand of the opposition and create space for the rest of the team. That less team fight oriented relic or one less defensive relic is going to make it that much easier for Day to find a Kraken or Luconium to find his way into the fight as well. I think we're going to see a lot of Nike for a long time.
I mean, when you have an ultimate as powerful as Nike's, a massive shield, even you take the shield away, that slow is ridiculous. I mean, you get hit by that and your entire team's slowed down. Well, now you can't even continue that chase. Do you waste a relic to try and chase it down, or do you kind of just say, oh, well, we tried at that point?
I mean, you're not even how often are you chasing a Nike, right? She's chasing you. She's the god of multiple health bars. She's gonna make it easy for you to hit her. It's just whether or not you've got the damage output to actually finish her off. More times than not, it's really not gonna pan out that way. As Mind the Gap have a 4-man group on the left side of the map. They're trying to get so aggressive in the early game, despite scaling slightly better in the late game. Makes me think that they're feeling very confident around this Gold Fury.
So far, Crimson does have those cooldown boots online, looking towards either Rada Tahuti or that Chronos Pen. And if he gets that Chronos Pen, he'll get that maxed out CDR and into the soul lane. Quite a bit of poke onto Dishonored as he has to leap back over to the safety of the tower. And those tank boots online for Wolves, so trying to do anything he can to combat this Nike. Ultimate out of layers to try and chase down one, and under the tower they'll have to make the continued chase. Slice and Dice will be good for first blood on Mind the Gap, and a blink from Promise to get past the backline and back into the tower. Mind the Gap on the board.
Good decision making for Promise there. If he doesn't use the blink, he's gonna lose his life. Layers picking up first blood. You never want to see a late game hyper carry get off to a strong start in the early, but that's exactly what we've got happening here. And it seems like that's exactly the build that Layers is going for. Golden Blade, not nearly as popular. Already has the Ninja Tabi, likely going to be the stone cutting sword picked up next for the Nemesis, which is going to make that damage output absolutely insane. Now this Ymir, who's already immobile, is going to have to contend with these slows and damage out the wazoo as well.
Ooh, Wolves dash is down, and so is his ultimate. They could make a big play onto this one. He's trying to run back, but there's just too much burst out of the Assassin and solo laner. Froggy will get their first one on the board, but Layers has made his rotation over, trying to get a Gale, trying to close the gap that he can. That extra little bit of speed will help him out to take down Luconium and trade it out as a 1-for-1. And all the while, they never got that blue buff.
It's a good attempt, right? You know that they forced back the majority of Mind the Gap off that last engagement, so you can go and try and invade that blue buff. Unfortunately, it just takes a little bit too long. Layers gets there in time to clean up the kill and defend the buff, which is going to turn into a net positive for Mind the Gap. But it's not been too bad, considering First Blood goes their way. Nemesis is getting off to a really strong start. It's only a 1-level disparity in the jungle, and about 1,000 or so gold between the teams. Froggy still has plenty of ways to fight in, and I'd almost say it's a completely even match because of how much better Froggy's team comp is at this phase of the game.
Let's see if they're able to turn this one around for him. Data Remember is going for what looks to be the Zoom Orb for himself, get that extra movement speed, because you got to have something to counter. I mean, yeah, you can be up the side and you're real fast with Tide, but you can't go through walls like a Giannis and his entire team can with that ultimate. So I like the idea of getting that extra movement speed online for him. And the Chronos Pendant for Crimson will max out that 40% CDR, so he might not be hitting quite as hard, but he'll be hitting very often.
He will. Now Poseidon's going to have a slight rotational advantage off of the Doom Orb as well as his passive, so at this point, the main strength of Poseidon is his ability to gank the side lanes. He can go to solo, he can go to duo, and that Kraken is likely going to be a death sentence for just about anyone it's able to make contact with because of the lack of Aegis, as Crimson gets a little cheeky speed buff invade.
And this is just the power of the Giannis. You can make that invasion, then you can rotate out because you've got portals and you've got a threshold. Two extremely powerful abilities for him. Maybe looking to get a rotation into the mid lane. Data Remember's able to get back to the safety of his tower, and that Kraken expended. Not going to get any kills off of it.
Man, the mental damage of a jungler walking to his speed and watching not the enemy jungler seal it, not even the enemy soul laner, the enemy mid laner just chuckling and cackling as he heads back to his lane. Luconium can't be feeling good about that one. Already off to a rough start, having fallen once and a level behind. Losing on your speed is a tough sell, and now they've got the timer. Mind the Gap, that is. I wouldn't be surprised if we see continually invade attempts. They need to be keeping that pressure up.
It's like when you get that leading omnipotence and you're just constantly in their jungle. Like, dude, I just want any kind of farm. You're just, all right, speed all the way through the map. Looking over for this Fury, though, as they're starting to group up for it. Oracles will go to Mind the Gap. The mid-Harpy will go the way of Froggy on the bottom side of it. Meanwhile, Dishonored will just kind of chill over out in solo lane, grab that totem, give his team that buff, and kind of back to the serenity, kind of the calm for the moment, before the storm at least. As Promise is making his rotation a duo.
It is a much slower pace than I was expecting from North America. 3 kills in 11 minutes. Normally we're at a mud fight by this point. I would expect to see an objective grouping pretty soon, with the gold lead starting to creep up to about 2,000 in favor of Mind the Gap. Their team fight potential once Wolves rotates out of that soul lane is going to be absolutely insane. Data Remember, Luconium both are going to have a very hard time escaping the cavalry charge, and with the setup, there's so much follow-up from Yanis. The stun's going to be a fantastic setup for the through space and time. Layers with his ultimate. There's so much that they're going to have to contend with on the side of Froggy if they want to win an engagement.
That's a big win for Bayernir. He got that Fields of Love for nothing. No beads, no ultimate needed. Quig's now in the middle of the enemy jungle. Two-man freeze out of Promise will dissuade them from aggressing any further into the jungle. Back into that dual lane. I mean, that rotation by Promise kind of scares Griff back. Griff then uses Fields of Love. I don't know if it was offensively or defensively, but regardless, he got nothing out of it.
Look at this grouping. Griff finds Bayernir. Nice pick. Now Ymir in a little bit of trouble.
Promise is going to go under the tower, but Layer's just going to continue that dive through space and time for the rotation. The Kefri ultimate going right into the tower. Layers make sure to get the revive off, but he's right into the clutches of Luconium. Has to dash away, has the shield available. Portal is going to get the beads out of Data Remember. Just narrowly jukes out the root from Quig. Able to pick up 2 kills from Mind the Gap.
Surprised that they elect not to fall back to the Gold Fury there. They find the TKO onto the side and the legitimate KO onto Bayernir as well. If someone tanks it up, the Stone Cutting Sword from Nemesis would have been absolutely chunking as Wolves getting aggressive. There's not a lot of kill potential here, though.
Now, Dishonored had his leap, so no stun available for him. He also had his ultimate worst-case scenario, so just trying to flex out, clear those minions, get a little bit of poke onto him is what it seems for the time being. But, yeah, like you said, much slower pace than we've been seeing. I mean, last game alone was 20 kills at 20 minutes. Well, we're at 13 minutes and 5 kills. I mean, these two teams are taking it a little bit slower than what we normally see out of these NA teams.
But no less oppressive than the last set. We're looking at very large gold lead. Mind the Gap seem like they've got a vice grip on the throat of this match right now. It's on Froggy to make something happen.
Well, Data Remember is going to get caught out, and through space and time will finish the job. That's going to be the first death, or second death onto the mid lane, or maybe even another one onto the support. One more basic out of Layers will put him at 4 kills, and they might be looking for another onto Bayernir. Fields of Love is down. Griff is looking and waiting for that heart bomb, or maybe just a couple more autos. There's the heart bomb to thread the needle. 3 kills from Mind the Gap. There's the bloodbath that we've been waiting for, and that will open up for the Fury.
There's a little bit of cross-map carnage for Mind the Gap there. I'm sure had Griff not found that solo kill, Mind the Gap would have far gone the Gold Fury and immediately gone for the dive themselves. These guys seem like they're much more focused on these kills.
Luconium has to use his ultimate right off the cavalry, but the knockup's not going to be enough to save him because he was still CC immune. Wolves gets a solo kill onto the enemy jungler.
Just a tough situation. I understand why Luconium's there. He's trying to make something happen. Okay, there's a 4-man grouping on the left side of the map. Maybe I can at least get away with stealing some bat camps. Unfortunately for him, Wolves is a predator, an apex predator, and he's not going to let you get away with it lightly. You're going to pay the iron price for that.
3 levels down now is Luconium. He is not having a fun time in this jungle. Wolves might be in for a little bit of a problem, but they remember not going to be able to close the gap quick enough. Wolves will get under the tower and away from this 3-man rotation.
Now that the Gold Fury has fallen, Mind the Gap have essentially free reign of the map, but that's no different game state than we were looking at 2 minutes ago. But this gold lead has now ballooned out to 6,000. Pyromancer should be on the menu. If they want to, they can group up and take them down just about any tower that they want.
Looking for something. Ultimate used up into the sky goes Bayernir. And they're just waiting for him on the ground. Said they're going to walk away. Now the rest of his team there. So that's 2 ultimates expended by Mind the Gap for just the 1 on Bayernir. But getting Rom's ultimate, that's one of his big safe havens taken away.
It is, and it hasn't really been doing much for him, has it? He hasn't had to use it to avoid a gank. He's been getting sold out by Griff nearly on cooldown now. The disparity between their builds has started to balloon out as well. They've got a bit of parity, both going for Oboe in that 3rd slot, but already Balance Blade picked up by the Cupid, likely going into that kin size, which is going to make it that much easier to deal with this unfortunately level 9 Ymir.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised about seeing a little bit more of the crit out of Bayonetta. We saw it last set out of the Hunter picking up into more of that crit build, but we're going for a lot more attack speed this time around, and they're going for something here under the solo lane tower. Diving Dishonored. The plug is going to be good into the portal. Unstable Vortex, but there's that extra health bar with the ultimate shield available. Griff's going to get a solo kill on a Baroneri in the meantime, while 4 players are still trying to deal with this one Nike. Dishonored able to get out, but not the cost of their Hunter losing out in that boxing match.
Unfortunately, Quig slightly off the mark as Day finds a rotation behind, but whiffs the Kraken. No!
No, that is not the Kraken you are looking for, and the shell is not going to be enough to save either of their lives. Layers pushes through, sitting in that Ymiro, will get the revive right back to his support, and Wolves playing frontline to keep Dishonored out. The root is going to be good. The portal just a little late, but a better wall out of Promise will keep him alive. Blink past the wall from the mid laner. Into the portal he will go. And goodbye, Ymir. Another one for Layers. Make it 7 in a row.
And don't forget what happened on the left side of the map. Griff found a solo kill just a couple moments ago and a tier 2 tower as Mind the Gap worked their way over to the next objective. 17 minutes in, 10,000 gold. They have got a vice grip on this game. It's no longer their game to win, it's their game to lose. They've got all the cards.
I mean, peep the gap here. 9,000 gold in their favor. 12-1 on the scoreboard. It is just unstoppable play by them. Now we get a little bit of a replay here to see what we missed when the solo lane fight was happening. Roll through. I mean, there was just absolutely nothing to do in the stun to follow. I mean, Griff is just bullying in this duo lane.
Yeah, just a tough situation. No Fields of Love needed, didn't have to use any of his relics. Baroneri needs to get some deep vision down, but if he walks that far into the enemy jungle, he's exposing himself to a gank or just exposing himself to Griff, and if Griff sees him, we just got to see what happens. At this point, Froggy's best case scenario, find a pick, hope that Mind the Gap try and take a 4v5 on a tower and defend there. Use that tower as the unofficial 6th man, because this lead is stifling.
It's only climbing further and further. With every tower still standing is another swap of gold that they can throw into their pockets. I mean, Mind the Gap already have item leads, like full item leads over their opposition at this point. I mean, it's just, how do you really deal with it? Like you said, is just sitting under the tower really their only answer at this point? Because right now it doesn't seem like Data Remember can sit under the tower. He and Krakens himself thinking they're going to go for the dive, a mind game of all mind games on the enemy mid laner.
And now we see Ymir in a little bit of trouble, but Mind the Gap showing some uncharacteristic discipline as they switch the target and find a double! Fantastic snipe!
And a Fields of Love to get a third one on backside. Might make it 4 as Baroneri falls to a triple kill out of Crimson. Only Dishonored left standing, and Wolves will drop him for the Dia side. Insane snipe out of Crimson to start that fight and essentially end that fight.
Might even just end the game at this point. We got 20 seconds left on a respawn, but it seems like Froggy is wet paper before the honed blade of Mind the Gap. Phoenix should fall relatively quickly. We'll see where their mind space is in just a second.
It looks like they're going straight for that Titan. One of player is up, and it's just a lone Ymir. He's going to get a 2-man freeze, but that Titan
50.
is getting chunked down. Only 20% left on it. They got to defend as best they can, but it's not enough. Mifflin, less than 20 minutes. Mind the Gap takes game 1.
Yeah, and only 1 death as well. It didn't look like it was particularly hard for him to find that a strong early game start, a good handle of the objectives as well. It just felt like Froggy kind of lost their handle on the match early on. But I think that's not all we can expect from Froggy. If the next game goes 40 minutes, I wouldn't be surprised. These two teams should be highly competitive based on their history.
Mm-hmm. I mean, like we saw in the first 13 or so minutes of play, it was pretty much dead even. Hardly any kills between them, but all it took was that one straw to break the camel's back. We'll have the desk break that down for us right here after the break.
Well, that ended up being a quick one, didn't it? 19 minutes and 42 seconds is all it takes for Mind the Gap to get the dub, and largely led here by Layers. I'm obviously still on the desk here with Kiki, so cheeky, Kiki, not so cheeky, whichever one you were going by at the time. Kiki, they went for a little bit of a role swap for this one, right? They had Day playing the Poseidon, they had Baroneri on the Rum, and I'm not so sure if that's the cause for this, but neither one of them looked quite as comfortable as we're used to seeing. And Layers kind of got to just free farm in that time, didn't he?
When you're a jungler and you're uncontested by a bunch of people who, you know, role swapping is not that easy. There's a lot of little things that you need to learn. So when a jungler is just able to do whatever they want, look at him right here. There's no fear in his heart. He's still full health. Has his sights on to the next person instantly. I didn't think that I would be seeing so many role swaps going into this. I expected like some spicy picks, but not spicy role swaps.
Yeah, I mean, it isn't just Froggy, right? We saw it in Europe the other day too. A lot of teams trying this out to mixed results, and we could talk about all the things that Mind the Gap were able to do well here. I mean, certainly Layers played really well, but this whole team played well. Griff got several solo kills over in the duo lane that were timed, where the casters were calling the action, and a kill just showed up, and that was Griff popping off over in the duo lane. So really, from minute one, there just was no pressure for Froggy basically anywhere. They got that kill over on the solo buff camp, but that was about it. The most of it was going, wow, that was actually just it. They only got the one kill, and everything else went the way of Mind the Gap here in this game. Do you have maybe a prognosis for Froggy? What do you want to see him do different in this next one to try and make sure they've got some pressure of their own?
I think maybe you can ban away Nem. We've been seeing a lot of good play from Nem. She has the shield. Yeah. It's just something about her. She has everything that you need. She has the shred. So maybe you can look to get rid of something like that. Susano is more of a high skill cap kind of character. So if you don't really have the opportunity to get kills, you're just going to flounder.
Not at all like what happened there with Layers. Kind of from the beginning of the game, he was helping his team to set the pace, and we said that he's kind of the focal point of this team. Where Layers goes, often this team goes as well. For most teams, right, your jungler can be the one that kind of sets that for you, but with this team in particular, that just seemed to be the case. And I know maybe adjusting this Susano, maybe getting them back on these same picks, but what did you see from Mind the Gap that really impressed you there as well? You know, I mean, I know Layers played well, but it felt like the whole team was just in sync.
Yeah, I don't think any of them were taking anything too reckless. They reminded me of the team with Genetics yesterday, where they were just playing for kills. They were keeping it clean. Don't do anything reckless. How many kills did they end up dropping in that last set? Or that last match? Probably like a couple.
Yeah, so many. It felt like we're going their way. We can go ahead and start looking towards these picks and bans here, but we're going to need to see a very different Froggy if they're going to want to be able to deal with the pressure that Mind the Gap have. I mean, there was a point where Myth, I think, said during the cast, whoa, uncharacteristically cautious from this Mind the Gap roster. They are playing focused and making sure they don't make any kind of careless mistakes, and I think that's what really was able to make the difference for them. So now in picks and bans, we'll get to see if maybe Froggy want to try and take the Nemesis away from Layers. So far, though, they're sticking with the same ban.
Yeah, because we're now in Season 7 of competitive, so I think everyone's starting to realize, as long as I don't throw my lead, I can win, right? Like, as long as you don't do some crazy Fire Giant, I think they ended up getting a 15-minute Fire Giant, which it was secured easily. As long as you do not give the enemy a shot, then you are in a good position. Which is why you see a lot of safe characters being banned. The healers right now, Set is just really hard to kill. Having an individual chance to create an opportunity is key in these games.
I think you make a great point there, Kiki. Gone are the days where you can kind of hope your opponents are just going to mishandle their lead or make some mistakes. I think that nowadays these teams are so good at closing out the games that you got to make sure that you're in it from the beginning, or they'll just run away with it and never really make those big mistakes that we used to see. So to round up on these bans, just as you said, a lot of healers banned away. This is a big adjustment, though. Wolves, who we didn't talk a whole lot about, is getting a bit of respect here in this ban. His Guan Yu was right there next to Layers in terms of the damage that it outputted. Not even 1,000 separated those two. The healing is obviously really difficult to deal with. And now another bit of adjustment. They're not going to let Quig have this Kepri taken it away from him this time. And I think Froggy are making some good adjustments so far.
I definitely agree. Yeah, you want to take away something that was stopping you from doing what you wanted to do. Froggy had a really great pick comp, but when you're against a Khepri, having a single target pick comp isn't really going to do what you need because Khepri's going to get a free res. So I definitely like how they're thinking now, and I love the Achilles Persephone pickup. They have great damage and the execute to counter Khepri, of course.
Yeah, you want the revive. Well, we got the Achilles to answer it. And this is what's so important, I think, about having multiple people on your team playing well, because Wolves plays lights out on the Guan Yu, Froggy has to ban it, and what does that mean? Now, that means Crimson gets to play the Persephone, because that doesn't get banned in the same slot it was banned back in Game 1. This is that sort of trickle-down effect when people on your team are playing well. It opens up the door for the rest of your team, and that's why now Crimson has maybe the best mid laner, probably Raw at this point, the best one, but Persephone not that far behind to get to put in your mid laner's hands. That's what's so important about everyone making sure they're playing well.
Right, we've been talking about Persephone being left up, and we're not really sure if, you just insta-lock her, because she does have her downsides. But Crimson on Persephone, I'm certain that he's going to be doing really good stuff. Maybe he'll miss like one ultimate, but oh boy, he is going to be making them regret it. Especially with that Heim pickup now. They have a lot of beats pressure, which is going to set up their jungle pick to, he could pick like a Circuit or something, and they'll be in a world of hurt.
You want to put that pressure on him, especially something like a Cupid that doesn't have the CC immunity there in the kit. He's a bit more reliant on fighting from a bit far back and using that range. It is the Cupid and the Nike here. I'm a bit surprised that we've seen the Dishonored be so insistent on it. Nike's had a bad pick. I mean, we covered how it puts the other team in a bad spot. They choose between the Relic and letting you have that big shield, but it didn't exactly have the best success up against Wolves' Guan Yu last game, but he's going right back to it.
Yeah, well, competing with a Guan is just hard. Can I do enough damage to go through his 300 shield or a heal come mid-game? But Nike's always comfortable. She does have a decent laning phase now, and I know that Dishonored loves Nike. I'm pretty sure he either plays Nike, Osiris, or that's it. I'm pretty sure that's what he plays. So Nike always happy to have her, and her passive it's only like 3% movement speed, but any movement speed helps you get out of there, right?
Yeah, so clearly on some comfort picks. Thanks for that little bit of extra insight there. So clearly Dishonored wants to go back to what is one of his strongest picks. So Froggy banned away the Amir and the Fenrir, taking a look towards support and jungle, kind of as you were talking about, and mind the Gap ban out the Bakasur and the Nemesis. That's purely going towards trying to limit what layers might potentially play. I wonder if there's a chance layers might end up with this Achilles. I know you normally want that solo, but I feel like it might be a great sort of flip for them to make with all those bans from Froggy coming out. Would you be okay with perhaps them flexing over to this Achilles in the jungle?
Yeah, I think that could work out. I mean, I think it'd be awesome if we saw an Ares jungle, which, I touched on their beads. They have a lot of beads popping with the Ares there. That's really great. And you see that they banned out Ymir, Fenrir. They're really worried about their beads timers right now. But I don't think we'll see a Ares jungle. They're definitely flexing the Achilles right now.
Yeah, that's great analysis there on the pressure they're going to have on those relics, right? And the fact that Froggy's trying to limit some of those gods who are the best at it. They end up going with the Morgan and the Camazotz. So still with this Morgan, they picked two of their carries that can be a bit more vulnerable to that, right? Without that extra help in their kits. As long as the Morgan's able to transform first, might not be such a big deal, but if she's caught in that base mage form, could be under some pressure. Camazotz, on the other hand, does not have that concern with Bat out of Hell. And take a look at this. If Thor is the pick for layers, this is his bread and butter, his absolute comfort pick.
I've definitely lost a couple of games to layers where he's like 10-0, and you just can't do anything. Thor's that kind of character who, once he builds up a lead, and if he safely uses his ultimate, it's really hard to punish. With his walls, he can cut off mobility. It also has that stun, which I touched on the beads, so very great draft from MG. Though I do like Froggy's too. You have the Kama to dive the Persephone, and the Morgan will be able to get in there as well with the Khepri to safely revive her.
Yeah, there's going to be some options, I think, for this Morgan to kind of transform into some aggressive options from Mind the Gap, for them to try and take, maybe even turning into this Nike potentially. There's some good options here for Froggy. Even if Mind the Gap do pick Asunder, you can't get rid of both of those shields if that is going to be the choice there for this Morgan to transform into. So some great options, but I think, again, Froggy put themselves in a position where you really have to execute if you want to deal with this Mind the Gap draft, whereas Mind the Gap, with this draft, they can just hold W and just walk at you, man. They got a lot of damage on their side.
Yeah, they're just going to run at you and just make you really have to back up and hope you get a good res at that point. But don't let Achilles execute you.
Exactly right. That could cancel out that res. Let's move into game 2. Froggy have got to win this one as I get it down to Blazy and Myth.
Well, you know what? I think I can handle this one coming in. What up, chat? It's Myth and that boy, Justin McClanahan, J. Mac Tucker, bringing you game 2 out of this best of 3. Mind the Gap with a 1-game lead. J. Mac, are you here, bud?
Yeah, we're good to go now onto that one. I was just so thrown back. I was like, you know what? No, if he says it's Blazy and Myth, I'm going to let Blazy take over onto this one. But no, I'm impressed you got my name right on the first try. You'd be surprised how in this day and age people still can't pronounce that last name. It just blows my mind.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of illiterate people on the planet, but we don't got to worry about them. All we have to be concerned about is Froggy's ability to make it through the early game with a god like the Morrigan, that absolute late-game hyper carry with that threat of, okay, I'm going to one-shot someone out of stealth and then turn into an Ares and burn everyone's beads, or into an Achilles and become this CC powerhouse. I think that's really the strategy that Froggy is going to be going for, and Mind the Gap, on the other hand, have tools to deal with it throughout the early game. Layers, in particular, is going to be putting a lot of his focus on a Day in the mid.
Once again, though, Day going into mid, Baroneri into Hunter. It didn't work out really well last game. It looked, like they said, like I'm saying, that's very uncomfortable. And I don't know how well this is going to transition into game number 2, especially with Layers on what they said. His bread and butter signature, I'm ready to just win this god. Because every time I see Layers get on this Thor, he is popping off.
Yeah, he really likes the early aggression that Thor affords him. This guy loves playing aggressively in the early game, which is why I was surprised we saw him start off the set on that Nemesis. But I think we can say now with confidence that this Day to Remember Baroneri swap was not a one-game situation, as Wolves getting poked out a little bit there. Because Day to Remember, I don't think is a Morrigan specialist, and Baroneri certainly not a Cupid specialist. I think these two have legitimately swapped roles between the team.
It may seem to be so, but when you play the opposite role the entire season through and perform so well, it seems so jarring to just pop back into it for a second time. And Griff gonna get that early rotation onto him by Luconium to pick up first blood for Froggy, try and get themselves on the board. And maybe that'll kind of help ease the nerves of Baroneri in that duo lane.
Look, normally I would demonize Luconium for going for a cringe gank here, but up against a Heimdall, one of the safest hunters that you could take, I think that might be one of the few opportunities where you can realistically kill him. So power to him for identifying the right time to show up, but when is it the wrong time to look for a 2-minute gank?
I mean, pre-level 5 Heimdall is pretty open to ganks, even with those portals. I mean, if you want to expend a massive cooldown to, get away forever, go for it, but more than likely you're going to see him with those planks like that. But now you're seeing the return gank. That's going to get the beads out of the support. Promise has to dash away after the gank. So no kill from Mind the Gap this time around, but a very important relic.
Smart pickup from the Capri, making sure that he gets out of there alive, but it is going to lose him out on that purple buff. Alpha Harpy going to be left uncontested as the duo lane of Mind the Gap start to back away here. I love this playstyle, though. This is a much quicker pace.
And Wolf is getting dove under the tower. Luconium again trying to be the power play startup for his team. Gets 2 on the board now. This time the kill going over to the solo laner.
Fantastic. This is a much different Froggy, right? They're looking a lot more confident. It seems like it was first game jitters, as now they've got a much better handle on how they want to play out this match. It's safe, it's calculated play style, they're not looking for aggression everywhere, and it seems like they're very willing to play around Luconium on this Camazotz, and it's created so much space that Day to Remember has already made it to level 5, a very good spot for the Morgan. Now that she has access to that ultimate, she's going to be a lot safer.
I think to the same degree that Layers is on his comfort, bread and butter pick, Luconium has kind of faltered back to his primary pick as well. He loves his Camazotz, has performed so well with it all season long. Now he gets to bring it back out here. Has been a tribute to the first 2 kills for his team Yeah, game 1 to game 2, this is a totally different Froggy team.
But still, Mind the Gap are doing a good job of mitigating losses. 2-0 from Mind the Gap last game at 4 minutes had us at about 1,500 gold in the lead. Right now, Froggy has really only established about a 900 to 1,000 gold. Mind the Gap are doing a good job of controlling these neutral objectives, be it around the oracles or invading a purple buff or controlling the mid camps. It seems like they're doing a very, very good job of controlling the map.
With those beads still down on Promise, I'd love to see a rotation to try and get this support. Maybe yank him back in with an ultimate out of Quig, but he's not level 5 yet. But I can only imagine once level 5 hits, that's going to be one of your premier targets.
It is. Promise, 40 seconds left on those beads, is going to be playing incredibly safely. It seems like Mind the Gap are ever aware of it. Layers rotating over for the second time this game.
Quig level 5 now on that Ares. Might be looking for that quick initiation onto the Khepri. But Promise is sitting so far back, sitting basically under the tower at this point. They're not going to be able to get anything from it. Layers level 5 as well. No ultimate used out of him just yet. Now that he's gone back, got those boots online. Now I can imagine we'll start seeing some pressure come out of Mind the Gap.
Surprising that none of the pressure that we've seen so far has been allocated towards the mid. Both teams have slotted themselves late game hyper carries who are pretty susceptible to ganks in the early game. Morgan and Persephone.
Ultimate out of Crimson and a bat out of hell out of Luconium. That's going to be used to retreat and get himself out of the field. Thrown by Crimson. So 2 ults used, 1 per team, and nothing else from it.
Luconium is going to have to trade out his blink as well, trying to initiate on a Crimson there, so he's going to be a lot weaker on the map for the next 2 minutes or so. Whereas Layers elects to pick up beads on the Thor, he's not going to lose out on any aggression at any point.
Might be losing out on Wolves. Knockup is good from Dishonored. He's got a little bit of the shield dive under.
Wow.
Ultimate out of Wolves a little early on the execution for it, but setting up for Layers as he dunks down. Sees a couple more basics. Needs that movement speed. The barrier formation too slow to turn it around. Layers ends up getting the first kill for his team.
Now on the board and almost completely caught up as Crimson loses out on half of his health in midday, showing that Morgan is not an ultimate bot, can absolutely fight at this phase.
Layers is going to need to get out. He's going to get rooted, but has that Mjolnir's attunement to dash himself away, get teleport back to that hammer. Wolves has a dash of his own, going to get a 2-man stun. That's big. Ultimate out of the Morgan into the Nike. He's going to get a big shield for him if they choose to use that ultimate. The Screech is good. Ult just used because he needs to use it for some reason for Day to remember. Luconium still chasing him out. Blink out of Wolves. That gets him out.
Immaculate pathing, man. Perfectly weaving throughout the entirety of that onslaught to find his way out of there. Pass down towards the enemy towers to make sure that Layers is able to get out alive. Instead, prioritizing his teammate's life, but still makes it out with his own. Fantastic play from the solo laner.
Again, going for this purple buff on this bottom side. Quig gonna ulti, get away from the Fields of Love stun that comes out of it. And a dash away for Griff. Quig still taking quite a bit of damage from Baroneri, but he's gonna take sword from Griff. That'll be the end of the fight for Mind the Gap. Once again, they steal that purple buff.
But we saw there, Layers was willing to rotate over. He stops his rotation once he realizes the fight has fizzled, and a good bit of discipline from Froggy not to continue that chase. Had they done so, they likely would have lost out on their lives there. Baroneri has good trigger discipline as well on those beads, realizing that that Ares ult was completely defensive, no follow-up available. Means that now he's got that added layer of safety. Layers can't even rotate in and find a gank easily, and Ares no ultimate means that the 3v3 is going to be slightly weaker for Mind the Gap for the next coming minutes.
There's a lot of solo lane slap boxing between these two warriors, and it's really about all that we're going to see coming through them. But living over here with Luconium's build and then going into Layers, you imagine that Layers is going to run for the Jotun's Wrath, that cooldown, or you think he might follow Luconium in suit and just go for a little bit of extra damage with that Crusher?
I think Jotun's Wrath is the path I would go, considering that the only healing you're really concerned about is from this Camazotz. Probably speed stick the other option as a fight erupts in mid.
Oh, gonna turn around, use that ultimate out of Crimson. Ultimate out of the Khepri will keep Luconium safe enough to use his bat out of hell. 2 chains come through, looking for a third one. Not gonna use that ultimate just yet. I remember getting low, and the flames will be enough to take him down. Quig with his rotation, able to pick up another one from Mind the Gap. And now, what was a 2-0 1,000 lead for Froggy is now a 2-0 400 lead for Mind the Gap.
How quickly the turns table. Now the mid tower under a little bit of pressure here. Laconium and Promise have been stopped from backing for so long that has allowed Mind the Gap Layers to regroup with his teammate. They could look for a speed buff invade if they so choose. They can group up on the Gold Fury. Already Quig rotating through the jungle, seeing if he can find anyone.
Oh, looking for Dishonored right now. Gonna get the first chain, missed that second one, and that'll likely be the end. A little bit of extra aggression out of Wolves to push him further back into the tower. Blink ultimate out of Dishonored. He wants the blue buff, but he's not going to be able to save it. Uses his own ultimate for it as well. Baroneri in his own field of love, trying to live through. Big damage coming out of the Hunter. Griff not going to have enough to end that fight, though. And that's going to be a full rotation from the jungler over, but not before they take down Dishonored on the right-hand side. Griff needs any way they can to get out. Dodging the screens. The Vampire Bats are still here, and he's out into a 2v1 and might even be able to make it out. A leap in out of Laconium. He's still fighting into it. He got the 2v1 kill. Griff's still looking for more. His Promise is pushing up, but he turned that fight 180 on its head. Day to remember, looking for rotation. Is the Madman going to get a third one? No, Day will wisely walk away.
From the offset, fantastic play from the Heimdall. Griff uses the first Gallarhorn to knock Cupid up out of his dash, finding continual damage, and then a 3-man rotation over to duo lane isn't enough to stop this man's onslaught. All they did by sending more numbers, Froggy that is make sure that Griff comes out even further ahead. Now 2 levels up on his opposition. This Heimdall is online.
Griff is a madman with that play. In most situations, you're like, well, I guess I'll just fight to my death. That's exactly what he does, but he's able to turn it around. That missed Screech out of Laconium was massive for him. Because he dodged that, he didn't give him that extra damage increase, and that was enough just to have him live through. Insane play out of Griff in that duo lane.
Yeah, by the way, he maintains his beads throughout that entire engagement. They weren't even able to take a defensive relic off of my man. He spit on him as he went back to base and lined his pockets with their lives. Fantastic play. Who needs to rotate to duo lane? Mind the Gap know that Griff's got a lock on it.
I mean, that's just all you could ever ask for out of your Hunter. You know, stay there, don't lose your lead. Oh, okay, they got 3 coming over, you know, get anything that you can out of it. No, he says, I'm going to get 2 of their lives out of it, and I'm not going to lose anything for it off of that. No beads. I don't even think he really used that ultimate except right at the very start of the fight to get out of Fields of Love. And now they have a 5-2 kill lead, a 2,000 gold lead when they were down 1,000. It might be looking for another kill as they dunk right on top of Laconium. The revive out of Kepler used a little bit early, and the Dot's going to make sure he can keep himself alive and sustain, but they might be looking for Dishonored now. He has to leap away from the execute out of Wolves. Oh, and by the way, Griff is doing it again to Baroneri.
That'll happen to you, but the chase continues. Wolves leading the charge at a quarter health, doesn't care, finds Day with the help of Layers.
And Promise just has to dash away. He doesn't have his ultimate anymore. He used it for Laconium, so there's nothing to save his mid laner. Mind the Gap, once again, they find the one straw that they need, and they slam on the gas pedal and instantly bring this from a 2-0 deficit to an 8-0 unanswered return.
Yeah, Your Honor, my clients are just built different here. Mind the Gap now 12 minutes in, 3,000, nearly 4 in the lead. They can move in towards the Gold Fury if they so choose, because just take a peek at these XP deficits. Quig up 2 levels, 2 levels for Wolves, a level for the jungler as well. Mind the Gap have complete control of the map. A little bit of deja vu of game 1. It just took a little bit longer to get there this time.
I mean, Mifflin, how often in 12 minutes is your Hunter the top damage on the map?
Not often. Not often at all. I mean, if you're going to send people at him to die, it'll happen for sure. And Griff almost makes it look easy now as he's continually finding these kills. Someone's going to have to rotate over to the duo lane on the side of Froggy to try and bail out Baroneri, because as far as the 1v1 goes, Baroneri's going to have to sit under tower. If Griff so chooses, he can just freeze the lane and Cupid's free food.
No, not someone. They need some team to rotate over and help him out, because Griff already showed that 1 is not enough and neither is 2. You're going to need 3, maybe all 4 to kind of help you out onto that one. As they're getting ready to set up here for this gold fear. I mean, 13 minutes in, Mind the Gap are still pressing this gold lead even further. Even without those extra kills beyond, they are still pushing more and more into their favor. 3,800 gold now separate these two teams. I mean, this is just a slow bleed out of them.
I would be very surprised if Mind the Gap don't make a power play for either the Pyromancer or the Gold Fury off of their next pick. They could potentially just group up and take the 5-on-5 engagement, and it should essentially just work with a lead that they've established for themselves. But what's been working for them has been finding those picks, and I don't see any reason they should switch it up. Day, in particular, has been struggling on this Morgan. Baronary on this Cupid struggling as well. There's so many ways in for Mind the Gap. They really can do no wrong.
I mean, they've spotted the weakness on this Froggy team, and it is the 2 carries of them. They are not comfortable in these roles on these gods in this matchup here, and it's starting to show in this boxing match for them. They're going to stun out Promise, and that's going to set them up for the Gold Fury. I don't think anybody's going to be able to get in time to take this one away. Mind the Gap are cutting it close on it. They will get the Fury, and an immediate disciplinary retreat out of them just to make sure they don't overextend.
A slow rotation from Froggy there. Day wasn't in range until the very last second, so there's no threat of a steal from a range. We saw that the Khepri couldn't walk in. My man's level 9. I can't blame him for being scared. He's 5 levels down on the enemy mid laner, so that's about a one-shot if he steps up at all. Right now, Froggy's in a very similar situation as they were in Game 1. They need to play safely, hope for a mistake, play around Day. Hopefully Day is able to transform into the Persephone or into the Thor and find an initiation. The main strength that Froggy has right now is the ability to not be Froggy. At least one of their members can turn into someone from Mind the Gap.
I mean, at this point, even without kills, they're upping their lead 1,000 gold almost every single minute. At this rate, they're going to be at that Fire Giant level that they were last game. Last game, we were 5 minutes away from the conclusion of Game 1's time, at least. It may go a little bit longer onto this one because they've been taking it a little bit slower, but they're already on par to potentially start setting up for this Fire Giant stun right off of the leap out of Dishonored. He's got the Thorns to try and fight back a little bit as well as an ultimate, but I mean, they're already tearing through that shell with those chains, and the Flames shortly to come after. Pluck in for the Abduct. Is going to make sure to get them off of the solo laner, but he's going to yank one back in with those chains.
Nice.
Data Remember going to turn around and get layers. Wolves has to dash out and try to get away. Luconium and Data Remember as Luconium leaps in, bat out of hell, but an ultimate out of Crimson may just be enough to stop this team fight in its tracks, so you think. But Data Remember ran all the way to the back line, is getting burned down by Quig. That's going to be the Scarab's Blessing out of Promise just to keep him alive for the time. And a little bit of a sloppy fight there out of Mind the Gap.
Yeah, Mind the Gap got out-rotated in mass in that engagement, and even then, only barely lose out on the fight. The chase is on. If you look at him, does it look like Mind the Gap's are the one that lost, forcing Froggy now back to retreating to their own speed buff, their Tier 2 tower? Mind the Gap might have lost the fight, but they should be able to get a Pyromancer or a Tier 1 tower, something along those lines, on the retreat.
Look at the Pyro now. They got 3 rotated over, but not their Hunter players. They're not going to have that quick burn out of it, and they realize that they don't quite have the damage to be able to deal with it just yet. Instead, Crimson will throw a little bit of poke Luconium's way, try and get a little bit of damage onto him. And a quick disengage out of both the teams will go back to neutral ground for the moment.
But we get the evidence that Froggy is capable of continually fighting back in. Mind the Gap, not too happy about it, trying to keep up that stranglehold on the match, now invading the red buff.
Griff. Griff is now the front line for this team as he just zoned 2 players away. He looked at Baronary backed away. He looked at Luconium backed away. This is the front line for this Mind the Gap squad. Level 17 on this Heimdall, following that level of minute pacing that you just love to see as a Hunter.
Blast and the Oboe already online, going into the kin size next. He's absolutely swinging, but Baronary, on the other hand, shifts up the build a little bit instead, picking up the Fail Not. That additional crit should be able to make up for, with the assistance of RNG, the lead that Griff has. He could potentially turn this around if he can get a couple lucky ones in a row.
Speaking on Fail Not, I learned, I think it was one of the last big events that was had. I think that's actually one of the big pro matches, that Fail Not can affect the minions, and the minions can also crit. I saw a minion crit somebody for 8 damage. Big numbers.
You know, you helping out the whole squad. Everyone's going to benefit from that the passive from Fail Not. I think, if anything now, Froggy, as ever, is in a position where they have to play reactively, but this lead has been snowballing so quickly. 5,000 isn't the worst place to be, but if they allow this Pyromancer to go down, if they allow these towers, this Fire Giant to go down, similarly to how they did the Gold Fury, this lead is going to become nigh uncontestable. I think Froggy's in a position now where they have to take a fight every single time Mind the Gap groups up.
Well, Mind the Gap grouped up. They got Pyromancer, and nobody from Froggy could answer. Luconium was too far back. Promise couldn't even attempt to make a rotation in. You think Data Remember is going to walk in after the beating he's had in the last couple of games? He's not stepping forward into that squad either.
You have to do something here. This bleed is so quick. You might not be able to fix it. You can't heal the wound, but you can throw a band-aid on it. If Mind the Gap groups up on the right side, try and take down a tier 1 tower on the left. If Gold Fury is getting contested, go for a cheeky Fire Giant. Froggy is now in a position where winner's side bracket is on the line. They're going to be sent down to losers. If they lose here, they have to try and make a play. Try and stop that from happening, even if it is risky.
The game has slowed down just a little bit, although the objective play is still at the top end here for Mind the Gap. They got the Fury and the Pyromancer now setting up for a Primal Fury. This will really accelerate their Fire Giant push if they can sneak this one away from them. But Froggy recognized this. They had the timer on it from when they watched it go down last time. They're going to be there ready to contest if Mind the Gap step forward.
And they're right to do so. If this Gold Fury goes down, as you already highlighted, Primal going to make it much easier to move in towards that Fire Giant. 18 to 20 minutes is that magical Fire Giant time where the majority will fall, at least based on SPL stats. So I think that Froggy absolutely make the right decision to show up in numbers here. If Mind the Gap sneak away with this one, they might just sneak away with the game.
A little bit of an unusual item we don't see much anymore. Rook Crimson going for that Charon's coin. Well, what's that going to offer him compared to some of the other pen items that we're more accustomed to seeing at this time?
Movement speed. I mean, that's really it. If you're trying to go fast, that's the item to go for, and it seems like Mind the Gap's entire strategy is, okay, well, they finally showed up to fight us. Let's W key at them, and it seems like Crimson doesn't want to be left behind.
Hold on, who showed up to fight who? Because so far, all I'm seeing is Mind the Gap fighting the Fury, and Froggy are caught with their pants around their ankles yet again, slow on the rotation, not able to get to that Fury, and they just handed Mind the Gap another free Fury.
So that's a situation where I think Froggy do legitimately get just caught off guard. The waves started to meet in the lane, so a couple people rotate out and try and make up a little bit of that farm. When you're this far behind, sure, you have to pick it up. But if you let that objective fall, as we already highlighted, now Fire Giant is going to be that much easier to clear. If Froggy wasn't willing to put up the full hard defense around this Gold Fury, I would have much preferred to see them group up on the right side of the map or group up as 4 in mid and try and force down a tower. They need to control the space that Mind the Gap is minding right now. They need to control where they're able to walk, and it seems like Froggy are very willing to just let them go wherever they want, and Mind the Gap are taking full advantage.
And they're further pushing their gold lead up. Even when Froggy fought back, they never lost much of that lead at all. They were still sitting at that 5K mark. Now they're sitting 6,000 gold up onto Froggy, and it's just getting even worse as every minute goes by in this game. Wolves going on to Dishonored, a 2-level difference in these solo laners at this time for the moment. Pushing in, Fire Giant started up by Mind the Gap. Dishonored and Promise on the front lines to try and get here and dissuade them. It looks like they're just trying to bait this Fire Giant, see if they can grab anybody caught off guard. They're looking at Dishonored for the time being. He's taking a little bit of damage, not really enough to where he has to deal with it just yet.
But it has forced the majority of Froggy to regroup here. Now they isolated, trying to find layers on the back end as the rest of Mind the Gap retreat and stay grouped. There's the passive healing benefit that Baronary brings to his team, so the longer the fight goes, Froggy should get a slight advantage. But as of right now, Mind the Gap still controlling the map. But for the first time, Froggy are able to split push a little bit. They take away a tier 1 tower, trying to punish Mind the Gap for grouping up as 5.
And Layers goes up into the sky looking for somebody, looking for something, but they don't find anybody except the Fire Giant. First team to dive onto. Promise is the only one over here. Dishonored is making his rotation after coming back from the tower. Fire Giant under half health, and it's only the supports and the tanks to try and stop this one through. Flinging in is Dishonored onto the Fire Giant pit. It's still going through. Mind the Gap gets the Fire Giant. What will they gain beyond just here? Griff uses his ultimate onto Data Remember, who had to transform into Luconium's Camus lets to get out. Baronary gets one with Quig. The revive is good to save them. Luconium able to pick up Layers in the back. That's now 2 down for that Fire Giant. Might be a 3rd with Wolves falling down, but Griff is able to turn around and at least get 1 for their troubles.
Mind the Gap with a split mindset on how they wanted to approach that fight. Layers and Quig on the retreat, Wolves holding the W key, Crimson gets out on his own, whereas Froggy, very smart. They started to push up mid, which allows them to rotate in from behind. Day finds the flank and forces Layers into a bad position with the help of Luconium, picking up a couple kills in the backline, and now Froggy keep the push up.
Shell gonna be enough to keep Promise alive there, so not going to get that 1v3 this time that Griff may have been hoping for. They lose that tower, and they lose Griff for it. Most importantly, they lost Fire Giant on 4 players of Mind the Gap. Only Crimson has that buff left.
But I think that's such a perfect example of what Froggy could have been doing throughout the entirety of the game. The reason they're afforded the superior positioning around that Fire Giant fight is because they didn't just group up as 5 and stare down Mind the Gap in the jungle. Instead, they realized, okay, we're at the disadvantage, what can we do? Let's try and strip away some towers, some farm. And Day split pushes mid and somehow is able to rotate in behind Mind the Gap, which is essentially completely evened up this game. Now only about 2,000 gold, or 1,000 rather, separating these two teams.
And with straight out of the 2 mid-tier 1s, it's just those tier 2s on the backside left to deal with for Froggy. They got the dual lane and the mid lane. Tier 2 towers, they can tell you, that's another 3,000 gold they could add, but at the same time, Mind the Gap still have 4 towers that they got to drop down. So as far as the gold swing for those, it's nothing too crazy for it. Essentially back to a dead even game here at 24 minutes.
But take a peek at some of the XP that's flipped. Now, Froggy has a 2-level lead in the jungle. The mid laners have caught up in experience. Even the soul laners have closed the gap a little bit. This game has closed up mightily, and both hunters have approached full build as well. We're looking at potentially the first even fight of the entire set in the late game. 24 minutes in, the objective spawning, Gold Fury. Both teams should be there on time.
And last fight, Froggy was fighting 6k down, but they fought like they were 6k up, getting a 4-kill swing for only 1. All they lost in that entire fight was Dishonored, who was there from basically start to finish of that fight, aside from the kill they got onto Griff for trying to defend a tier 2 tower for some reason by himself against 3. But Mind the Gap, even with that loss in that last fight, they're still the aggressors pushing forward, trying to get anything they can from Froggy.
Seems like they want to push even though they've only got Fire Giant on the 1 member, realizing that potentially their team fight should be stronger. So many Beans Burners, Ares for example, but instead it's going to be Dishonored at first.
No shield left for Dishonored. He does still have the bubble, so he can get out of the Ares ult if need be. Luconium has to bat out of hell because he takes too much damage. It cancels it early. Getting back through, I'm not sure if that's the call that he wants to make up into the sky as Layers looking for a target. Dunks down on the Day to Remember. Blink by Luconium gets him back into the back line and back to safety. Layers gets the stun on the Promise, trying to cut off his path. But they got what they wanted. They got that tier 1 tower and maybe even a tier 2 along with it.
And all that space that comes with it as well. Now they can back up and pick up the Primal Fury. The majority of Froggy had to go back to base. Luconium limping back into the engagement. If Mind the Gap are quick, they should be able to strip this away, but instead, going to play it a little bit safer. Set up, wait for Froggy to work their way in, and try and retake the fight.
Oh, might be looking for a little something else here. Blink in by Wolves, going to get the stun just on the Promise, but everybody from Froggy has made their rotation back in. 2-man stun,
wow.
1 on the Bayronerian. So much damage from the Mjolnir. It's a 2-man. Layers has to back away, has to use the beads and the Aegis just to get out of that fight. Dashing out with those crystals is Griff, getting all the way to the back. Looking at Day to Remember, he needs to just get a little bit of damage, but Day to Remember will find him. And the Aegis is not going to be enough to save his life. It'll be a 1-for-1 trade out. But maybe looking for more. Twig doesn't have that ultimate, already used it. But he's sitting at nearly full health along with Crimson.
Day makes such a good decision there to trade out his life in favor of Griff's. Now, Mind the Gap are going to have a much harder time burning through this objective, whereas Baronary remains alive. If Froggy are able to find a pick for themselves, this Gold Fury should go their way.
2-man root out of Promise, and the ultimate out of this Cupid. It still had that Fields of Love available. Quinn gets blocked back. Up into the skies, Layers 2-man dunk onto it with the combo from Crimson. It's gonna be enough to take down 2 of them with the Mjolnir Entertainment to finish it. Dishonored in the back on the Crimson. Uses the ultimate to slow him down, give him that extra health bar. Crimson, I'm not sure if he's gonna make it out of here, but neither is Dishonored. The execute will go right through that shield and say no sir, and Layers will finish the job with a deicide for Mind the Gap.
Man, Layers does it all for his team there. Picks up 3 individual kills. Now 5 and 2 is the slash line of the Thor. And now Mind the Gap, having staggered the deaths of Froggy, should be able to group up relatively easily and move their way to the Fire Giant. We're talking 40 seconds on Camazotz, 30 seconds on Cupid, 30 seconds on Nike as well. And Mind the Gap has largely respawned already set up for the Fire Giant as well.
Data remember the only one alive and the only one who can even try and contest this, but even if Layers just steps up to him, I mean, he's at the speed buff right now. Layers can just keep Day zoned away and allow the rest of his team to go for this fire giant. He spots the clone out. There's the stun right onto him. A lot of return fire, but immediately turning it right back. Layers is going to get out of dodge with that one. And put Data remember down to half health, but that's set up for the fire giant sitting less than 2,000 health. Will go right down for freely to Mind the Gap.
Layers times that wall perfectly to cancel out. Animation cancel the ultimate from the Morrigan. Had she transformed, likely would have been able to find the kill for herself. Instead, Layers makes it out alive. 5 members with Fire Giant for the first time for Mind the Gap. The push last time went their way with only 1 member having fire. Now, with all 5, only 2 tier 2s stand between the Chaos team and the enemy Titan.
And once again, they've built their lead back up. Another 6,000 gold in their favor once again. They were up 6 and they were only up 2. Now they're back up 6. That 8K gold swing back and forth between these two teams in just these last few minutes of play. I was going to set up, oh, by the way, another Primal Fury has come up for Mind the Gap to erase and take off the map instantly. Just as soon as it was given life, it was taken away from it. Mind the Gap will continue to push forward.
The game simplifies once you get to the siege phase, and that's when it becomes much harder to play as the Morrigan. This unstandard, this unorthodox mage is going to have a much harder time dealing with waves or AoE damage, is going to be a little bit lacking compared to something like a Ra or a Poseidon or even a Hebo. So instead, Day goes for a little bit of a split push on the right side, going to make it harder for them to push down that tier 2 tower and Phoenix, but it's going to be slightly late to this rotation of the Phoenix here. Instead of going for it, Mind the Gap though, instead go for this tier 2 tower.
When it comes to this Phoenix defense for Froggy, man, what is kind of their key play to get themselves right back into the fight? Like, who are they looking to pick, or you know, kind of who are they looking to send away to ensure that they can have a successful defense?
You're trying to shut down Crimson inside the team fight. You're trying to make sure that Griff falls early so that the ability to siege falls as well. We saw already what Data Remember's ideology is going to be going into these engagements. If he can close the gap towards his Heimdall, he's going to try and trade his life every single time. And if you take a peek at the Morrigan's build, it's very one-shot centric. The additional burst from Polynomicon, all the penetration from Soul Reaver, Charon's Coin, Spear of Desolation. It looks like Data Remember would be very happy going for a one-on-one trade if he's able to find the Heim.
I mean, you saw he tried going for that one-on-one with Layers, end up both of them losing about half of their health in the process of it. But on the flip side, Crimson has gone for a little bit of defense in his build. This Mantle of Discord on, 4 players from Mind the Gap. That powerful defensive item to try and keep them all alive.
It is now. Froggy have done a good job of slowing down this push. Mind the Gap playing very disciplined right now, but they still have a minute and a half on fire as Promise gets caught out.
No. Promise going to get stuck with it. The Grasp of Death out of
loses the dash.
Mid laner is going to go through. Promise gets yanked right back into the midst of it. They expend 2 ultimates to get down the tank, but they take 2 on the process. Up to the sky. Layers does manage to find him right on the edge of the ultimate. Taking down a second player now for Froggy. They're fighting a 3v5 at their Phoenix, but Quig is just chasing Data Remember away from the fight. Layers with the wall. That's going to get the ult out of Dishonor, but that shield is already gone. And continuing the dive through, Laconium has to use his beads. Dishonored has to leap away, and there's no defense left for this left side Phoenix.
Griff is a little bit low health, about 50%, so he has to play safely around this Morrigan, but Day shows himself, making it that much harder for him to find that 1v1 pick. This 5-man tight coiled grouping from Mind the Gap is going to be very hard to deal with.
Stun onto Day. That's going to get his beads. The spin is good. Not enough damage to return fire onto it. Layers sitting at a quarter health. He's going to fall down to Luconium. And now the fight is swayed into a 3v4. The execute off the mark with Promise's rotation, and he will even out the number of bodies on the field for Froggy at least. Going to do anything that he can to distract them. Wolves is going to go down here. Eventually, Luconium able to take him down. They get 2, and they save that mid-bird.
But Mind the Gap aren't going to lose out on much here. They might potentially lose a tier 2 tower, but even that, I doubt. Just a slight overextension from Layers drags his team into a bad position. Griff, caught between the Phoenixes, is forced to use his ultimate to retreat towards his own team. And from there, Mind the Gap kind of crumble inside of that engagement. Day does a very good job dragging out of position the majority of Mind the Gap, using that beads to stay afloat as well. With Fire Giant respawning in 30 seconds, both teams should be in full force, but only one team is missing a bird.
Luconium not going to hit either of his abilities, but he will get the mobility out of Griff, and the beads from the Fields of Love is going to push him even further back. Root is good, but it's going to force out the ultimate out of the air. He's going to bring two of them in, and an ultimate out of the mid laner as well. Crimson finds Dishonored alone with that grasp. Still continuing to chase through. The chains are on to Promise. Promise's beats are down. Up in the sky, Layers manages to find the edge of it with that ultimate. And we'll get the Scares blessing. It's a massive defense taken off. An ultimate out of Dishonored just to get out of Griff's ultimate. He's stuck inside the Fire Giant pit, and with those Omo procs bouncing back and forth, no chance for him to get out.
Yeah, my man Griff schwangs, man. You can't let this dude free cast. That pull from Ares with just the AoE damage from Heimdall's autos and those Ovo procs able to drop down 3 members of Froggy to about 50%. We saw what a Nike shield, a Sentinel of Zeus, means to Griff at this point, and it's just about nothing. Enhanced Fire Giant goes the way of Mind the Gap. 2 Phoenixes between them and a Titan. 30 seconds left on this Nike's respawn, and no Kepri ultimate available. And we thought the last defense was hard. Good luck this time, Froggy.
I mean, Griff looked at that shield and said, what, did you make that an art class? Because he just shredded through it like paper mache, looking for this final, or not the final, at least looking for this right side Phoenix. The mid one was still left alive from their last fight. Pushing in, 4 versus 4 for the moment. Data, remember, a little slow to get over onto the full rotation. He's trying to poke it out with that bird. No chance of getting through. Ultimate dunk to 2, and that's going to be an instant deletion of both of them. Dishonored is still down from the fight at the Fire Giant, and he's going to be an ultimate out of Data, remember, to transform into the Nike. Gets his own Sentinel of Zeus. And not by me enough to dissuade him for the time being. Luconium grabs Griff, and that's a lot of their continued push taken off the table. But there's also Luconium's life taken off the field. It's going to be down to a 2 versus 4 to defend against this Titan. But Day doesn't have an ultimate. Dishonored doesn't have an ultimate. And against 4 players at 35 minutes, I don't think they have enough defense to save this Titan. It's down to half health. They're still pushing him out. Quake taking a lot of damage, but the Titan taking even more in game 2 in a clean and even 35 minutes. We'll go to Mind the Gap.
God bless, man. It looked like Layers was smurfing out there. It looked like Griff was smurfing out there. That was short work, and Froggy is an incredibly potent team. Mind the Gap are on a warpath. They've got their eyes set ablaze, looking at Worlds, and if they keep looking like that, we might just see them there.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the few teams out here among the SOC in all 4 of the phases that we've seen where this is truly a dominant SOC team competing against these SCC teams.
It really is, man. And, you know, power to the Box Boys, the 4-man box squad, keeping the SCL dream alive. I love to see it. They're making great strides on PC.
Well, that's all that we've got for you here under this set, at least as far as the casters go. Finch, I mean, break down that game for us over there on the desk.
Man, I really appreciate J-Max saying my name right since I didn't say his right earlier on. Wow, this is a game where there's a lot to unpack from this one. We saw a great argument for how strong hi-rez is. We also saw a great argument for maybe not putting Baronary in the long lane. I mean, there's a lot of stuff to try and think of, but in the end, this does go to Mind the Gap. They find the 2-0, and they will be moving on. Kiki, I still have you here with me on the desk. I mean, which one of those threads do you want to tackle first? Layers' performance, the struggles for Baronary. Where do you want to go here, man?
I think you definitely want to touch on, I noticed at the end there, Thor only had 15k damage, whereas his carries had 25. So when you have your carries, when they're able to have the room to do their job, it in turn makes it easier for everyone else. Here we watch Griff actually end up getting a 1v3. He gets 2 kills and a 1v3. That is so impressive. When one player on your team is doing this, everyone else has so much space to gather farm, to make any sort of plays that they want.
Yeah, Luconium rotated over and said, oh, you let Griff get to level 11, huh? I'm only 9. Not much he could have done to compete there. Then Layers helping to get this kill into Dishonored. Wolves surviving sets that all up. But I think this is your point, right? It's really everyone playing well together. Griff surviving in the 1v3, Layers coming over when Wolves lives long enough to get support. They all were doing enough. But there was that point in the middle of the game when it looked like Froggy was back into it when they won that big fight around Gold Fury, and it kind of got away from him. What was Froggy doing well that was keeping him in this game despite what Mind the Gap was doing?
So I think a big thing is trust. They trusted each other with this role swap. I mean, sure, they probably have little things that they need to work on, but once they got to late game, we did see coordination. They were making sure to pick right targets, and MG were trying to do their best to keep the game in their grasp, but when you're playing up against a Morrigan, a Kamazots, even Nike, there's just so much disruption. It's hard to really wrangle the ropes on them.
And Mind the Gap were succeeding off getting these picks right away, but when you have Nike Shield and Kamazots going up to the air and hi-rez, it was extending these fights out. And as you said, their coordination on all that stuff was so good that it was really making it hard for Mind the Gap to close things out. But Froggy ended up kind of overextending, giving some kills back, and then Froggy, or rather Mind the Gap, were able to get some more Fire Giants and eventually close this one out. So I think I'm glad you gave some credit over to the good things that Froggy did. I kind of came down on a bit hard when we started, but there was a lot of good stuff from Froggy here too.
Right, they're still a loser's bracket, so they just got to live and learn. You know, there's still another chance. Don't get too in your head. But when you're up against a Persephone and she's doing 30k damage, it's just really hard to do your job. Props go out to Crimson for making Persephone look ban-worthy.
Yeah, sometimes you're like, man, it's her ultimate, and then it's like, no, it's the res, no, it's the flowers, no, it's Bone Rush. I mean, Persephone has so many tools. It can be so difficult to deal with. And you said it before we went into this game, Crimson is the kind of person that makes Persephone look as good as we know she can be, and that's exactly what we saw there. Let's get a quick recap here on the bracket. It is Mind the Gap and Spreed who moved on. Mind the Gap did so flawlessly with a 2-0 win. Spreed needed one extra game, but did get it done. And now they face off against Get a Grip and Winter Dogs, and this isn't like Europe where we thought that those top teams were out of reach. I think here these teams have a really good chance, so make sure you tune back in for those matches to see how those end up going. The one we're going to have here next will indeed be those matches, Get a Grip versus Spreed, Winter Dogs versus Mind the Gap. So I'd recommend you don't go anywhere because they could certainly get some upsets. Kiki, is that your same read, that the 1 and 2 seeds are not safe here?
Yeah, you definitely have to watch out. You can't give up anything, and it's really showing that drafts is so crucial. People need to be taking it seriously, and the first 2 picks, honestly.
They have seemed to make a lot of the difference here so far. Thanks for riding here with me, Kiki. It'll be a quick break, then we'll be right back with that very important match 3.